Good evening. We're going to do part 3 of our drug battle. Again, I'm going to try to read my handwriting. As I get more into it, I get more emotional and my handwriting gets really bad. So bear with me. So to recap part 1 and 2, Rue was 16 and we were discussing our first hospitalization back in February of 2019. She had 4 very infected abscesses and suspected MRSA. I just arrived in from Arkansas, and this is where I started to learn just how bad the Colorado system is for children and minors who are in need of help with addiction. In part 1, I told you that I had found a detox program in the hospital that I thought would be able to help us. Upon arriving, I learned that they did in fact have a program. However, it was only for adults. We were assigned to the hospital social worker, and her and I met to discuss what our options were. Unfortunately, to both of our dismay, there were very few. They agreed to leave her on a 24-hour watch while we began to try and navigate the system. Good old Google and searching for rehabs and treatment centers. What I found is very few options. Only a small handful of places with untimely waiting lists for beds. In the first few days, I must have spent countless hours on the phone, repeating myself over and over again. Sometimes I learned about Colorado Springs. It is considered to be a hub for human trafficking. With the age of Rue at 16 and the age of the guy at 32, I learned there too wasn't much I could do because she was 16. I learned about human trafficking victims and how they are groomed. The young girls and boys they start by dating them and making them feel loved and secure. Once they have brainwashed them into this love and security, that's when they start with I love you. If you love me, you'll do this. You'll do this for me. Daily, I was hearing stories of how much this guy loved her in different ways, and he would show her and tell her. It would make me sick. She even said that she had been pregnant prior to arrival at the hospital, and the drugs made her lose the baby. I had the doctors do a pregnancy test as well as STDs. Both came back clear, thankfully. She was still coming down and still all over the place in her thoughts and communication. She would spend many hours of the day crying and sleeping. She would draw notes and sayings with their initials and such. She would cry while brushing her hair and say that he always brushed her hair. Again, there's many pieces of that part of the story I'm not going to get into. This is just so y'all have an idea of how in love she was and how infuriated I was. While on the phone in the corridor one day, I was overly frustrated with dead ends, and I started having a breakdown, yelling at one lady on the other end of the phone, "Please just help me. Find an option. Please just take her, or she will die if she continues this." Someone called security on me and said that I would have to leave or calm down. At that same time, another staff member walked by and stopped and asked if they could be of any assistance. I began with our story again, and I just cried out of pure frustration. Round and round, I seemed to be just spinning. Later that day, the same staff member came and found me, and she said that they had actually had a class on human trafficking between our meeting that morning and just now. All she could do was think of Rue. The class was to inform them on what to look for and the different types of behaviors and the different things that the victims would say. She asked if I would be interested in a meeting. This was a welcome turning point. Later, I did meet with the very special to my heart individuals, and we started looking deeper into these possibilities. All the while still searching for somewhere for Rue to go once she was discharged. What I heard time and time again is that the state of Colorado, there are certain criteria a child must meet in order to be placed in treatment for Medicaid to pay. A minor has to have an outpatient therapy and a paper trail. In our case, we did try therapy, but she refused to go. Like, she would go once and then she just wouldn't go anymore. She would go back a few months later and we couldn't keep her in there. Sorry, I lost my place. By the time that we hit this battle full head on, she was already living on the streets. So therefore, because she did not take to the normal drug path and start out slowly and gradual and basically went straight to using needles placed in her body, she did not qualify for any type of treatment. I continued to beg and plead. I just kept talking and pushing anyone that would listen. I believe it was around week 2 that the hospital decided to call a meeting. I do not recall what the meeting was called, but I do recall the head nurse telling me that this was unheard of, especially for a drug patient. And I had heard many times from many staff. While it felt reassuring to hear, it also felt wrong. How do you just go in and go out and not fight? One nurse told me many of these kids come in and out and their parents just get tired, or by the time that they do have abscesses, they have been at it so long that they just have given up. I didn't fully understand that at that moment, although I absolutely understand it now. The meeting was to discuss the meeting was for the professionals. I was not included. They were going to discuss what to do with her. The infection by this point was more or less under control but not gone. And by most standards, she would have been released and treated at home for the remainder of the time. However, we did not have that option. Dad nor myself was equipped to deal with this type of drug addiction. We've never had this kind of problem ourselves. She was determined to go back to this guy on top of that. After the meeting, I once again was given hope and told they would not release her without a plan or a place for her to go. And again, I was told that no one has ever seen this before, holding a child, or any drug addict. My determination renewed, I set back at finding treatment. And again, I found we could not get the funding. I did find a rehab, but we couldn't get it funded. We continued to pursue every avenue between Google searches and every other suggestion made. We called for a psych eval to be done to see if we could get into a mental institution. And again, the law is clear for minors. You are not suicidal, then you can't, if you can't quit putting the needle down, putting the needle in your body, that will kill you. It is viewed as a choice, not as an illness or a disease, which to this day makes no sense. It makes me very angry because I cannot wrap my mind around the difference. This is a child that clearly needs help, and obviously, if you can't stop using drugs, there is something wrong that keeps you wanting to stay high and disconnected from reality. Is that so different from someone who is depressed and wants to escape reality with an instant fix, as opposed to a drawn-out torture? Let me be clear. I'm not saying that suicide is the easier or a better option than drug addiction. I'm just saying that they're equal in some aspects as far as the mental health part is concerned. So once again, we did not meet the criteria for the institutionalization. We then called a meeting with the head of the local place in charge of coordinating and arranging such help. After a complete mom meltdown, which I am not proud to say, I was completely mean, I was rude, and I was downright hateful to this woman. I then regrouped and apologized. We worked together, and then again a different type of evaluation, one especially for Medicaid, to hopefully approve Ruth's stay somewhere. This could take up to 10 business days once the evaluation was completed, and we still had several days before the evaluation could be done. One nurse told me in the professional-only meeting that the staff said this mom won't give up on her child, so we cannot either. So if you are fighting the system, you feel like you're losing at every turn, and you truly might not win. I'm going to be honest. We didn't win this battle. You might not win. But keep fighting. Don't give up. And know that people see and hear you, even if they can't help you. Now we knew that the hospital would not be kicking us out, and at least for now, we would be waiting possibly another 2 weeks for an answer. They moved her to a different unit for lack of bed space. We still had 24-hour watch. We still had no concrete answers. I still spent most of the day on the phone in meetings, while also trying to learn and spin circles in the human trafficking puzzle as well. Trying to obtain restraining orders, find rehab, get funding, all while trying to be supportive yet firm with Rue, was more than draining. Grandma had been out of town and all that time, and she was going to come in for a few days so I could go home to Arkansas and check on my home and my creatures and just get a couple of days of sleep. With the move to the new room and the new watchers, new environment, anxiety was up for all of us. That night while I slept and the watcher was doing whatever she was doing, Rue very quietly and very slick-like stole my phone. She sent to Sky a message. I woke up as she was sending them. She sent several. How she couldn't wait to get back to him, how she loved him. There was a few. I was more than disappointed. I was irate. That's probably an understatement. And I was just plain mad at myself for even putting that temptation in the room. I was truly just beginning to understand the hold this whole situation had on her, and how much of a stranger my child had become. I'm going to go ahead and stop here. This will be the end of part 3. I know this is all over the place and it's probably quite hard to follow, but this is how I felt and what I went through, and learning and navigating a broken system with little to no options for minors, a slew of professionals willing and wanting to help. But they can't, because their hands are tied, because of rules and laws that only serve a particular drug path. It is a very terrible system the state of Colorado has. And I'm sure that there's many other states that have horrible systems as well. But I can only speak to what we have gone through. And our system is broken for these kids. And our system needs help. And the professionals need options, because we have, to this day, which we'll get into later, to this day we have at least 20 people on our team who can't help. We're all spinning in circles, and we're all just trying to navigate a broken system. That is one of the main reasons I share this story. So that if you're battling, don't give up. And if you're trying to navigate, keep pushing. There's not a lot of options, but there are people out there who will help you fight. This is our fight. This is part 3. Thank you for your continued support. There's so much love, and I'm very grateful to all of you. Truly, I am. Thank you for listening to our story. I do apologize. I'm just kind of scattered all over the place, but this is how it was. Much love and light. Have a wonderful evening.